Okay. So, presentations, I was trying to think if there was any last things that I needed to tell you. When you guys are giving your presentations, please, when it's your part, please turn on your mic and your video so we can see you and hear you. Um, Other than that, yeah, that's all I can think of. Okay, so group one was Alexia, Taya, Nick, and Beatriz. So I am going to load up your PowerPoint, get it started. Okay, so whenever you guys are ready, I'm going to turn my mic off and let you get started.
So yeah, we had global warming. So you can go to the first slide. So global warming is the term used to describe the rising of the average temperature on Earth. It has to do more with the overall climate of the Earth rather than the weather on any given day. The exigence that is needed to be addressed is climate change. Climate change refers to the change in weather patterns and growing seasons around the world. We can see that with the rising temperatures of this winter in the Midwestern states and the more southern states like Texas having to deal with more snow and ice and colder weather that they're not used to. Um, it also refers to the sea level rise caused by the expansion of warmer seas and melting ice sheets and glaciers. This poses a serious threat to life on Earth. Go to the next slide.
Um, so I had major viewpoints. So the majority of adults say that climate change is due to human activity. About 30% think it originates from natural causes, and 20% believe that there is no evidence of global warming. The IPCC, which is a source for scientific opinion related to global warming, 95% have certainty that it's due to human activity. And also research done by Pew, which has people with PhDs in earth science. 93% of its members also concur that it's mostly due to human behavior. People also kind of question climate scientists. 33% of adults think that they have a very good understanding of it. 39% think like they are pretty knowledgeable, and then 27% think that they don't understand it at all. 61% of people will make a major change in their way of life, which is like recycling, reducing emissions, kind of things like that. And many Americans believe that both individual efforts and policies made by, politicians and governments and things like that will have an impact on climate change. Next slide. So examples for natural causes of global warming. The first example I have is ocean currents. There's something called the global scale circulation system, which is both surface and deep ocean currents that circulate the globe every thousand years, which plays a vital role in distributing heat energy, regulating weather and climate. Earth orbital changes is the next one, and you don't notice these right away. They're only noticeable over thousands of years. So the Earth makes one full orbit around the sun each year, and the Earth is actually tilted, and changes in the tilt can affect the seasons and the strength of the seasons. Solar variations, which come from the sun, and we know that the sun is a major source of energy, of climate, and the output of these variations are constant, but they're slight and they can affect the climate, but current global warming can't be explained by these variations due to them being constant or increased slightly. The last one I have on here is internal variability, which these changes are caused by internal interactions with the climate, and often involve positive feedbacks. Next slide. Rhetorical situation. So I just kind of mapped out trace here. So for the text, the purpose of the text is to inform, analyze, evaluate, and convince the public of global warming and the effects on the ecosystem and to the earth. The reader or the audiences is the general public, climate scientists, U.S. government policymakers, authors are various, and the exigent is the climate change needing to be addressed. Next slide. So for constraints, I kind of broke the constraints down in each, like people who believe global warming is occurring, people who believe global warming is occurring due to natural causes, and people who don't believe it. The constraints are kind of the same for each category. So the constraints for people who believe global warming is occurring is due to human activity, are fearful of what's happening to the ecosystem, water, food production, and the earth. Adults feel that they need to change their habits in order to reduce greenhouse gases. Next is the constraints for people who believe it's happening due to natural causes, and they refuse to believe that they and humans are the cause of global warming and tend to shut out the idea. Their attitudes are negative towards humans causing global warming and don't feel that they need to change their habits. And constraints for adults who don't believe that climate change is happening. They fear that they are part of the problem and don't believe change is needed. Adults, these adults have no interest in global warming and have a negative attitude towards the information related to global warming. Next slide.
So majority of the information of global warming is logical information. I feel like there is a couple emotional, you can find a couple emotional information, but the arguments are over believers and non-believers. Over 97% of climate scientists agree that human activity is extremely caused by global warming versus there's more than 1,000 scientists that disagree that humans are primarily responsible for global warming. Rising levels of human produced gases are released into the atmosphere, creating a greenhouse effect that traps heat, and versus Earth's climate has always warmed and cooled, and the rise of global temperatures within the bounds of natural temperatures changed over the past 3,000 years. Rise in CO2 over the past year are clearly caused by human activity at a rate much faster than natural climate changes could produce, versus rising levels of CO2 does not necessarily caused by global warming. And then average temperatures on Earth have increased at a rate much faster than it can be explained. CO2 is saturated in Earth's atmosphere. That's more CO2, man-made or natural, have a little bit of impact on the climate. And then you can go to the next slide. Sadly, it's more than a picture of polar bears on social media starving. Sadly to say, global warming is occurring too fast to allow species to actually adapt. Instinct species are going extinct at a rate so much faster than the extinction rate. Global warming is framed as an economic issue. Countries that have expressed the most negative consequences are of natural disaster, loss of life, and natural disasters, properties and economic effects, the social program framing. Richer countries frame the issue in terms of energy policies, while poor countries and those that experience global warming focus on the natural impacts. Then media from richer countries also focus more on the science. So you can go to the next slide. In the long-term future of global warming, if we continue to have issues with global warming, temperatures will continue to rise, and the forecasts to increase by 2.5 to 10 degrees in the next Fahrenheit in the next century. More droughts and heat waves. Hurricanes will become stronger and more intense, and sea levels will rise 1 to 8 inches by 2100. Sea levels on Arctic will likely become ice free. And I feel this is, and then you can go to the next slide. And those are our sources.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Now, I believe as you guys were giving your presentations, I thought I heard some questions pop through here. So, we have three good questions, so I'd like you guys to address them. So the first question that came through was, it's a personal opinion question, but do you personally think that global warming is an issue? So I'll let you guys answer that.
I absolutely do think global warming is an issue, and I do think that it is primarily human caused. I mean, there's many, many other causes that are contributing to it as well, but I do feel that the science proves that we are the main contributor to it. And I definitely think that there are steps that we can take to reduce it, which are the big steps like reducing emissions, carpooling, recycling, reduce and reuse items that you're able to, recycle and things like that.
I completely agree with Lexi with all the statements she made. So I feel like I don't need to add anything else.
It's obviously an issue at some level or another. Science is not really my uh, best field, so I guess I wouldn't know the best ways to go about dealing with it or to what extent it's really an issue. But I mean, you can obviously see that it's impacting the world in one form or another.
Okay, awesome. The next question that popped up here is a good one. It says, what types of steps can we take to reverse global warming? If we can't stop it, what's the result? So it's kind of a two-parter. So think of the research you guys came across, and did it mention anything about steps we can do to reverse it, and what's going to happen if we don't do something? If that makes sense.
So I think I kind of touched on things that we can do, not necessarily steps, but I think, each person can start, I guess, step one, start with recycling and then carpooling. And then, I feel like I kind of answered the first part of that question with my previous answer. And I think that we can slow it. I definitely don't think at this point we can stop it. if that kind of makes sense.
I agree with the not being able to stop it part that she mentioned. Um, I think that it's something that's kind of inevitable with the way that we live nowadays. Even with um, companies like Tesla trying to make fuel efficient cars, I still think that we live too much of a polluted lifestyle that we can't stop it, but there are ways that we can try to mitigate it as best as possible.
Okay, and then let's just look at one last question here. Uh, did you find a lot of facts on how much animal agriculture, us eating animal products, plays a role in climate change or global warming? So, did you find facts about the animal relationship here to their role in playing in climate change and global warming?
I did not find so much
In the
info about.
research,
Oh, sorry. You can go ahead.
that's okay. Um, so I didn't specifically come across anything in this research, but I have watched documentaries related to food production and things like that. And if I'm remembering correctly, cows produce actually a great deal of the methane that's being released into the atmosphere. Um, so I definitely think with how much meat we do consume, that we could definitely reduce the amount that Americans do eat. I mean, I even just look at myself and how much red meat, cow meat that I do eat, and it's quite a bit when I really think about it, and even think about it in terms of a month or 6 months or even a year. So I think if we could reduce that, that could also help reduce, the emissions and things like that into the atmosphere, if that answers the question.
Beatrice, did you have anything to add to that, or did she kind
No, yeah, she did. Yeah.
of kind of covered it, right? Okay. Well, excellent. You guys found some really, really good research and very interesting research. I even liked the slide that you had that compared kind of those who recognize global warming and those who maybe don't think that it's really a thing. So good job. Again, round of applause. If we were in class, we would definitely give you some applause there. Okay, so let me transition here for group 2 then. Get that up for you guys. Okay, so group 2 was Justin, Lexi, Alexis, and Ella. So let me get your PowerPoint up on the screen. Get it into our slideshow. Okay, let that load up. All right, so I'm going to mute myself and then you guys can start when you're ready.
Okay, so our presentation is on marijuana legalization, the pros and cons, and just the all around issues and benefits revolving it. Could you go to the next slide, please? So, the effects of marijuana legalization on us as a society, there are positives and negatives. Some of the positives are the relief from the opioid crisis, which is a huge problem in America that's actually labeled as a pandemic.
Justin, I'm going to interrupt you just really quickly.
And this is probably the biggest thing at state tax revenue, and the federal revenue. States such as Colorado, Oregon, and California collectively have seen $80 million per month in their recent legalization. So if you put 50 states together, that's insurmountable amount of money from such a small part of the economy. And then job creation. Right now, today, marijuana employs 200,000 people directly and 300,000 people in total. So that's actually 1% of the whole American population. So that could in turn bring a lot of jobs. And then some of the negatives are its effects on your physical and mental health. The physical part is more of like the lung conditions and the heart defects it could potentially bring up. And then the mental aspect is mainly focused on teenagers, where teens smoking and using marijuana in their development years, it can often cause psychological issues such as like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and stuff like that. And then another big concern is the rise in automobile and workplace incidents. So there was a study done in Colorado where they actually associated 62% of all automobile accidents to marijuana. So there's been a huge problem kind of arising with that, with the new marijuana legalization. So next slide, please. And then some reasons why marijuana should be legalized. So a huge kind of unfairness is, for example, like Beloit, Wisconsin. There's Beloit and South Beloit, and you can get in trouble for having a little bit of marijuana on you. Fines, jail time, whatever.
We lost you, Justin. Can you hear me? All right, let's see what we can do here. Hey, Justin, can you hear me?
Those are some of the benefits. That's some reasons to be legalized. Next slide, please.
Hey, Justin, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, we lost you actually there for a little bit. I'm thinking that your connection may not be super strong. So, because of that, if you do want to shut your camera off, that's okay, as long as we can still hear you. Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll go to the next slide.
Thank you. And this is just a visual aid showing on people supporting the legalization and opposing.
I actually have some more information on that. Justin, no.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. I wrote down some information so we know a little bit more about the polls. So these polls were based in North Carolina. As you can see, one of them is a poll for recreational use and one of them is for medical use because the opinions, as you can see, do differ a little bit when it comes to those. So the support for legalizing marijuana has grown a lot, at least in North Carolina, over the last 3 years. And those who are under the age of 44 are actually twice as likely to be for legalization than those 65 and older. And according to the article, Democrats are more likely to support the legalization than Republicans. But for support for medical use, it's a little more similar for age than it is for recreational. And the overall favor of medical use is going to be higher because people would rather it be used for something, useful, something that's going to benefit someone's health versus just using it because you can or for fun. Next slide, please.
And then some reasons why marijuana should not be legalized. So I touched on this earlier with the increase in drivers under the influence. In Colorado, there was actually 1 in 8 fatal crashes related to marijuana use. And then the fetal risks, such as women smoking while pregnant, there's been a lot of people saying that it's okay, like in myths. And it actually causes a lot of birth defects and can potentially cause cancers because the carcinogens in smoking marijuana. And then another huge concern is the increase in using it amongst the youth. There's been a 65% increase in Colorado of youth using marijuana. And in Anchorage, Alaska, 141% increase of marijuana-related suspensions. So they're kind of saying that it is causing some issue amongst the youth. And then a lot of people also say that marijuana is a gateway drug, and it can lead to, other doing harder drugs and drinking alcohol and all kinds of stuff. So those are some reasons it shouldn't be legalized. Next slide, please.
Okay, so I did like my rhetoric based off of like kind of like the generalization of like after doing research and stuff like that of what most people were saying why it should be legalized. So the first point that I have on the slide is it's easier to legalize it than to prohibit it. And this is the point of the at this point in like the United States current status, there's almost too much marijuana already like circulating throughout the United States that it would almost like it's going to be harder to get rid of all of the marijuana that's already circulating than it would be to just legalize it. A quote from National Affairs is the choice we now face is whether or not to make cannabis available, but whether its production and use should be legal and overt or illegal and at least somewhat convert. So that's just kind of saying is like we just face the fact of we either normalize it and allow it or know that it's happening but just kind of ignore it and put it like in the back of the closet. So then for federal legalization, due to it already being so circulated throughout the United States that many believe it should just be legalized federally and not on a state by state account because it is easy to smuggle and it is most of the time considered a low risk and harmless pleasure drug for users. And then this would prevent approximately 500,000 arrests made in the U.S. each year and release some of the people who are in jail already for cannot speak right now, marijuana-related drug charges. So then, as Justin had touched on too, that it would bring in revenue for the states. Black market marijuana sales average to be about $50 billion per year. So if it's legalized, states can tax the drug sales and make a profit off of it. This is also like marijuana has been something that's been around for centuries and has been used for centuries and not just for drug purposes. It was first grown in the Eastern Asia and migrated to Europe and has been in the Europe since the first settling of the colonies, like, well, before, so in the 1500s, and then when they came to the United States is when they brought it over and it was grown in Virginia originally. It didn't have like, it had many first started being grown, such as being used as a fiber, fuel, and used as food. It wasn't used as a drug until it was grown in Mexico, where the plant originated being smoked, and due to the fact that it had higher amounts of THC than other marijuana plants. And with immigration, the practice of smoking it became popular further north. And the first state that ended up banning it was in 1913 as drug prohibition started to rise. And then it was federally banned throughout the United States in the Bogues Act of 1951. And then, so important figures for legalization. So I don't know if any of you guys know this, but marijuana was almost normalized and legalized back in the 1970s when and had the support of the 39th president of Jimmy Carter, who stated penalties against possession of a drug should not be more damaging to an individual than the use of the drug itself, and where they are, they should be changed no matter nowhere is this more clear than in the laws against possession of marijuana in private for personal use. And it was, like I said before, it was almost legalized until they did a statistic, or statistics of a high school or high schools throughout Michigan. And it came back that most teenagers who were like of the senior age, so like 17, 18, had said that they were using the daily usage of the drug. And so with parents becoming concerned, a lot of drug usage awareness groups became there and were trying to get it like not legalized anymore. And then with the crack epidemic, the legalization for marijuana basically was out of the picture. Next slide. And then, so the constraints, this is kind of going off of the fact of why people of like a general sense think that it should not be legalized. So first off, there's not enough research behind it. Since it is already a widely used drug that most people have access to and the government knows it, like there's obviously a reason as to why they aren't legalizing it. It's also considered to be a gateway drug, and there are many unseen effects that this drug might have, and that's part of the reason why the government is saying no. But because it's illegal, it's hard to get the research done because it's obviously not available to do the research for. Some common misconceptions. So, as stated before, it's considered a non-addictive drug, but it actually is addictive because when you smoke marijuana, the THC provides the body or allows the body to produce more dopamine, which is the chemical in your brain that provides you happiness. So because of this, your body will start with the THC involved produces excess dopamine, but then it also turns off the sensors that allows it to produce naturally on its own and without the stimulus of THC. So it can make you reliant on the drug to become more happy. And then another one that is kind of said is that there's not really any major side effects to marijuana, but there is. If you have certain genetic like variants, you are more prone to schizophrenia if you smoke marijuana and other psychiatric disorders if you start usage at a young age. They're also nervous that if they legalize it, that marijuana is going to be promoted to minors, and this would be a big deal since most states would legalize the drug for adult usage, and if it is legalized, then it may be commercialized. And there would be a strong appeal for younger groups to start using the drug early on in life, kind of related to alcohol. That was what I saw a lot when doing this research, was that they were comparing it to the alcohol prohibition, and when it was like put back on, that a lot of younger kids started using alcohol instead of more towards the adult, which obviously adults use it too, or drink it too, but that's what they were trying to target in that point of research. The average age that many people started or had first smoked marijuana dropped from the age of 19 to 15 or 16 in the 1970s when it started to become super popular throughout high schools. And in 1979, 1 in 10 high schoolers admitted to using marijuana products on a daily basis. And then the final one would be controlled distribution. So they're worried that if it's not going to be controlled, if it were to be legalized, that it wouldn't be able to get controlled properly, and that there would have to be federal regulations set and not or state by state regulations to make sure that the products are safe for consumer usage. And if it were to be legalized for a medical stage, you would need to have a prescription from like the doctor saying that you need it. And you can't just walk into like a distributor and say, hey, I need marijuana. You actually have to have proof of it. And they're nervous that some people might fake that and create other problems. And then the creation of dispensaries obviously would need to happen. So it would create jobs and to obtain for, once again, medical reasons and not for recreational use. And if they do create them for recreational use, then it would be a different story. You can go on to the next slide.
Patterns of development. I found 2 articles that were for and against legalization, and these are a few of the strongest reasons that I found. Cannabis is a medicine. It's a scientific fact that cannabis fights nausea in chemo patients and intractable seizures in kids. For anxiety, marijuana is less addictive and toxic than benzodiazepines like lorazepam. And then legalization creates jobs and raises tax revenue. In California's second year of legal sales, the state collected $305.3 million in cannabis excess tax revenue alone, and an estimated $635 million total in state and local revenue. Legalizing increases product safety. Regulating cannabis, like alcohol, takes the lawlessness out of production and distribution. Licensed and regulated companies replace violent drug cartels and street gangs. Consumers get safe, tested cannabis products instead of pesticide and mold-contaminated products. Marijuana is less harmful than alcohol. Research has found that moderate adult cannabis use is less harmful in the short, medium, and long term than other legal substances. The CDC found 35,823 alcohol-induced deaths in the US in 2017. By contrast, the CDC did not report a single cannabis-induced death. For against legalization, legalizing marijuana increases use by teens with harmful results. Marijuana is especially dangerous for young people because human brains are not fully developed until around age 25. The American Academy of Pediatrics said that adverse effects of teen marijuana use include impaired short-term memory and decreased concentration, attention span, and problem solving, which is interfering with learning. Alterations in motor control, coordination, judgment, reaction time, and tracking ability have also been documented. Legalizing marijuana leads to more marijuana-related medical emergencies. People are used to the idea that a candy bar is a single serving size, but a candy bar with marijuana could have 4 or more times the recommended dose of THC, depending on the state's regulations. People end up in the ER with anxiety attacks or psychotic-like symptoms from eating sweets infused with more marijuana than they were expecting. Marijuana use harms the brain, and legalization will increase mental health problems. Cannabis use may increase the risk of developing schizophrenia, depression, and other psychiatric disorders. Marijuana is addictive, and dependence on the drug will increase with legalization. Heavy users who stop using marijuana may suffer withdrawal symptoms such as insomnia, depression, anxiety, nausea, chills, and stomach pain. For the author of the For Legalization, I found that he was using more logic and facts from credited sources, and for the author from Against Legalization, I found that they were using a lot of facts and played into the emotions a little bit. And then you can go to the next slide. Current status. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives has passed legislation of legalizing marijuana at the federal level on December 4th, 2020. The measure, sponsored by Representative Jerry Nadler, would remove marijuana from the federal list of controlled substances and expunge some marijuana-related criminal records. However, it is still up to states to pass their own regulations on the sale of marijuana. And then you can go to the next slide.
So this is just one more quick little visual aid for you guys to be able to see what is possible to happen in the future. And I have some notes down about states that are looking to legalize. New York, Connecticut, Maryland, and New Mexico are likely for 2021, as you can see in the picture, to become legalized. And then we also have Missouri, Oklahoma, North Dakota, and Ohio for 2022 coming up quickly here. And then so the states that you see in like that magenta purple color, they could bring in 2.5 billion in their first year in like profit, and then 6.4 billion in 4 years if that all goes through, as well as more than 6 billion in business opportunities in Arizona and New Jersey alone. Next slide, please. Those are our little citations.
All right, awesome. Let me look at our chat box here. I did hear a couple of questions ping through, so let's look. Okay, this one's actually a really good one because I know that more than one of you had mentioned the revenue and the economic effect. So the question is, what jobs are created that are related to marijuana legalization? Wonder if there's one or two of you that could touch on that.
Okay, so with the legalization of marijuana, obviously, as I had stated, they're going to have distributors. So within that, you are going to have the people. So you're going to have to build the building, and then all of the people who work inside of it are going to have, like, that's going to create the job then too. And then through the growth and production of it as well, they're going to have to create like farms where they plant all the marijuana, and then people who harvest it and then get it to the distributors. So those are just like a few forms that you can. And then obviously, like, there's going to be probably still like some black market selling of marijuana because it's always been that way, but there's also going to be legalized versions of it too with the distributors.
Okay, awesome. The other question is, it's another good question, deals with some of the research that you guys maybe did as you were working on this. Is there any research on marijuana legalization in other countries? Like, how have other countries handled the issue?
So I actually did some quick research on what other countries' laws are. I don't know, what kind of issues are gathered from these countries that have already had it legalized for a certain amount of time. But the countries that have it just completely legalized are Canada, South Africa, Uruguay, 14 states in the United States, the District of Columbia, and some of Australia. And then the list for countries who are doing it just for medical purposes is very long. You can find it on the internet, but it's about 25 to 30 countries that have it legalized for medical purposes.
I was also doing a little research after I saw that question, and Canada is one of the countries that has benefited significantly from it. They kind of have like a socialized medicine over there, and the revenue that it been for that is extremely beneficial. But one of the big issues that they're having is what to do with the people already incriminated and dealing with what they have went through. Like, so people that have already served jail time and are on probation are in prison now. That is the biggest issue that they're having as of now with the legalization of recreational and medical use.
Okay, thank you. That's actually very interesting. I don't remember which one of you had mentioned it. One of you was listing off statistics. I take notes while you guys are talking. One of you mentioned that there was a 141% increase of Alaska youth using the marijuana. Now, can you refresh my memory? Did Alaska like legalize it, and then that's where that percentage came from? Can you help me out with that?
Okay, so the study was only done in Anchorage, Alaska, and what had happened? I don't know if they're recreational, but I'm almost positive they're medicinal. But it still brings in more marijuana to the communities when it is medicinal, you know. So and the suspensions in schools related to marijuana increased by 141%. That's what I was saying. I don't know if I cut out or if I was just a little nervous and whatever. But they're just having more issues within schools in Anchorage. So I kind of just looked at individual studies of places that have already done it and kind of pertained it to that. But yeah, that's what it was. It was 141% increase in marijuana related suspensions within the school district.
You may have very well said it. But trying to write while while you're talking, I don't always get it all. But even still, 141% increase is crazy. So, all right, excellent job, you guys. So again, kudos, applause for you and everything. Um, Here's what we're going to do. We are going to power through and let group 3 present. And then once group 3 has had the opportunity to present and have had the opportunity to answer our questions, then we will take a break. Okay, so let's power through. Let's pay attention to group number 3. So that was Angela, Jasmine, Bailey, and Ulysses. Let me get your PowerPoint up here. Keep the questions coming. You guys are doing excellent. You are asking some wonderful questions. Let's see here. And Lexi, you asked a question about submitting the notes, and I will touch on that as soon as bleh. One of you said you guys can't talk. I can't talk either. As soon as group 3 is done, we'll touch on that. Okay, let me do this. Okay, make sure that's up for you guys. Okay, I'm going to mute myself. I have to get this here reset. Okay, so whenever you guys are ready, please go ahead and start.
Okay, our topic was on immigration, so you can go to the next slide. Okay, what is immigration? The definition of immigration is the action of coming to live permanently in a foreign country, and an immigrant is a person who moves from one country or region to another in order to make a new home. The net international immigration accounts for about 2/3 of the US population. You can go to the next slide. What is the reason for immigration? The exigency for immigration comes back to push and pull factors, some of which include economic or political reasons, family reunification, natural disasters, or the desire to change one's surroundings. So I just have an image of some examples of push and pull factors. So at the most basic level, immigration increases the supply of labor in the economy. More labor means more goods and services are being produced, so that the national output of GDP rises. Immigration also affects the prices of the inputs that are used to produce these goods and services. You can go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide if you didn't hear me.
Okay, so did you already cover the slide I'm looking at is the one that has flag and people on it?
Oh, no, I was on the push and pull factors.
Yeah, and so then I went to this slide.
Did you not hear me read it? Was I skipping out or something?
No, you read the push and pull, and so I went forward, but I'm just trying to figure out if I didn't go forward enough.
Oh no, this is fine.
Oh, okay. Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't messing up. Okay.
No, you're fine. So how does immigration affect our lives? The ways in which immigration affects our lives includes our population as a whole, our economy, and supply. So low-skilled newcomers were supplied labor for industrialization, and higher-skilled arrivals helped spur innovations in agriculture and manufacturing. So the data that I found showed that the long-term benefits of immigration didn't overcome the short-term costs to the economy as a whole. You can go to the next slide.
All right. The two major viewpoints are people who are not interested, but they would like immigration to happen in the United States, and the cons would be against it. And for the pros of immigration, there would be promotion of lower levels of crime. I know that in the last presidential term of Donald Trump, he was referring to Hispanic people or people in below our country as criminals and people who are going to bring drugs and whatnot. But that isn't really the case actually, because in Texas there was an inmate study with the Department of Justice of the state found that legal immigrants were represented in prison populations. And although illegal immigrants make up more than 6% of the population of the state, they are just 4.6 of the prisoners in state level prisons. And as compared to native residents, immigrants are 69% less likely to be incarcerated. And since I am Hispanic and I did grow up in Door County here my whole life, I've never met someone or an immigrant in my culture who wasn't a criminal. They came here solely for the opportunities and for the purposes of the benefit of the doubt, nothing less or not to cause harm. Another pro would be it raises the GDP, as Bailey mentioned. It produces a slight increase of the national GDP as immigration happens at natural levels. Immigrant productivity will raise the GDP by much as 0.4% in a single year. While it doesn't sound like much, 1/10 rise in US GDP is equal to an economic effect of $18 billion. That means that immigration provides the economy with the total annual value up to $72 billion every year. And as well, immigration diversifies local economies. Immigrants offer their local communities new insights, experiences, and ideas, such as maybe people from their culture opening a restaurant, like a Hispanic restaurant or a Middle Eastern restaurant in an area where they don't really have that opportunity to see stuff like that. And there's more power to be found within the group with this additional diversification. On a local level, immigrants start businesses, earn an income, and help others. This causes a rise in local demand, which produces more income and benefits the economy further. Stronger economies that are based on the experience of immigrants tend to see the most success. And for the last one, immigrants benefit most families in the country. As in, immigrants, they're just not their whole viewpoint. I mean, their whole goal is to not obviously steal other people's jobs in this country. It is a process of families seeking to contribute to their local society by providing for themselves, even when contemplating illegal immigration, unless they are trying to cause trouble. The average individual does not come to a foreign country. So basically, they just want to help improve the society instead of causing harm. You can go to the next slide. And for the cons, or people who believe that immigration isn't a good idea, is that a good point would be that immigration can cause overpopulation issues, since this country and many popular countries that have immigration issues, they are first world countries and they are very wealthy countries, which can lead to overpopulation. And if populations become imbalanced, then in regions where high levels of immigration take place, it can create resource access problems at the local level, maybe access for education, maybe access to health care services and whatnot. Another point would be it encourages disease transmission. Due to immigration procedures, many diseases can be transferred to new regions. The devastation of smallpox among North Americans' local tribal populations is widely documented, and disease-causing agents migrate from immigrants across borders, which can have a negative impact on the local population that may not be exposed to certain conditions on a regular basis. Like a good example would be maybe Africa with the Zika virus, or with their issue now with the AIDS epidemic, how it's been affecting Africa recently. And maybe if immigrants from Africa come over there into the United States, that can bring new diseases. And it's kind of I think it's kind of funny because it's kind of like repeating history itself when European colonizers first came here to America and they brought diseases to the natives. But besides that, the third point would be that it creates stressors on educational and health resources. Like I said before, with the overpopulation, with certain communities that didn't have the resources or didn't have enough at first, would now have to try to supply more as much as possible. And um, such as like kids, they need more programs for English language learning, which I had to go through personally because where I live in, with a predominantly white area, there wasn't an ELL program for me, English language learners program. So I had to teach myself English most of the time. Um, so it just has to, it affects as well taxation and can be a bit difficult because sometimes immigrants won't stay in that area permanently. There's no guarantee, which can cause them to lose their investments for schooling and for health resources. And as well, for the last point, is that it can place stress on local social services. Uh, Again, with overpopulation, it can cause stress points on employment related social services, uh, more need for food banking programs, food stamps, basic housing services could be growing, and this will bring pressure on the finances of these programs and could cause local councils to propose higher rates of taxation to cover future shortfalls. Even if immigration has a positive effect on the economy over time, it might be too much for certain communities to absorb the short-term costs. You can go to the next slide. And the constraints, for the people who are pro-immigration or believe that immigration is a good thing, they don't really have much constraints on the issue because they can see the economic benefits and cultural benefits of how they can understand more about other ethnicities or races, so they can get a better grasp of or more perspective on issues such as that. Because many of my friends, they are white and they don't really understand the issues with me personally, what I go through, and with me being there, they can help. They can gain more perspective from that. The constraints with people who are aren't in favor of immigration could be fearful for the drugs they can bring to this country, violence, drugs, diseases, and maybe another one could be overpopulation with higher taxes. You go to the next slide.
So I read an article, The Public View of Immigration, and it essentially goes over both of the options, so both sides when it comes to the statistics in general. So a few of the sources that were on the article were Fox News. They stated that 19% of voters believe that they should send all unauthorized immigrants back to the country of origin. Whether it was Mexico, Asia, Africa, no matter who they were, that is what they had thought. 66% of the state stated that they should remain in the country and be allowed to become citizens by paying back taxes, learning English in English programs, and pass a background check. So all those that had violated any type of laws or any type of background should be deported. 14% of Democrats actually support mass deportation, where the 26% of the Republicans do not, and 29% of the Tea Party members agree in mass deportation. The another one was Pew Research Center. 29% believe that the U.S. should prioritize towards more enforcement along the borders, where 24% believe that the priority should be the path to citizenship, and the rest believe that both should be a priority. In the National Journal, they stated that 25% of voters believe in mass deportation, where the other percent of the population believe that they should be allowed to stay no matter how long they have resided in the U.S., as they have officially become citizens. The Iowa Republican caucus was taken, where 61% of people in Iowa believe that they will lose, they are afraid of most that we will lose our American culture as a whole, and that immigration is a national security concern themselves. A huge thing is voting when it comes to polls, what kind of options and what kind of people are more popular when it comes to either the presidential or the state elections,
where only 25% of the general public stated that they were more likely to support the candidate with the harsher public statements on immigration, while 41% were less likely to. On the flip side, 46% were more likely to support a candidate with positive views on immigration, and only 15% were less likely. So, in conclusion, the majority of people support the immigration reform to create a better pathway for citizenship in a whole, and are not in favor of deportation unless it's for like violation of our laws with a criminal background. Next slide. The next thing is the media. So the media has glorified the mass deportation that has occurred over the past couple of years. They're limiting refugees and people claiming an asylum. So there are a lot of people that are in the deportation centers where they're filing asylum from the countries that they currently are in, and they're actually being rejected by 91%. There are separating women and with their children and keeping them in unfair and unhealthy conditions. They are not giving into those people that have taken a chance to become a citizen. So those that have paid taxes, are part of the economy, are living legally, or essentially doing as what citizens do, they're still not giving them a chance to prove themselves. They assume that all immigrants are from Mexico and they come from all over the world, and the economy is taking a hit with the loss of people that are being deported, with over 60,000 people deported and in holding within a day. That is a lot of people that are not contributing to our economy, and that is taking a hit. Next slide. So it's just a couple pictures of the deportation camps and the ways that they're being forced to stay. 900 people that were held in a facility that is only meant for 125 people. This is where the even more diseases and more things can occur. There's been a number of children that have actually died because of malnutrition. Their food expired and old food. Children were covered with snot and tear-covered clothing, not being able to shower or share restrooms. They also were able to soil their pants and sit in it for days on end. And children were caring for other younger children that they had just met. Next page. And here are just a couple of statistics of the number of amount of people from immigration that have come to the United States in the last decade. So they're in 2017, 2018, they have essentially stayed pretty close. They really haven't changed, but that is mainly because of the deportation that has been occurring. And then another chart is just of the amount of percentage of where everyone is coming from. So back in the 1900s, it was just Russia, Italy, and Australia and Hungary, and now it's a little bit of everything, where Mexico being the highest amount of percentage. So it just gives you a better idea of where everyone's coming from. Next slide.
Okay, the current status and consequences. Immigration is something that is unresolved, and it's always been unresolved. The Immigration and Nationality Act allows grants to people to come into the U.S. The U.S. allows immigrants in on work visas when they provide valuable skills to the workforce. Each year, the presidents meet with Congress in order to come up with a number of immigrants that they should allow into the U.S. and what they can provide for the U.S. Next slide. Joe Biden unveiled an 8-year pathway bill to allow 11 million people without legal immigration status to obtain a legal immigration status. And then some of the consequences are like there's language barriers, immigrants come in with less education, and then things like illegal immigrants coming into the United States, how they don't pay taxes, and they're sending their money and back into like Mexico and other places that they come from to help their families, which does put a strain on the United States. I don't know, the others went through a lot of the things that I would cover. I know Trump with his deportation has caused a lot of issues in the immigration status of people. And then next slide. is just our works cited slide.
Okay, awesome. Let me kind of click out of here. Okay, I don't think I heard any questions ping in here. Do you guys have any questions for group 3? So groups 1 and 2, do you have any questions at all? I wrote some down, but I would rather have the questions from you guys. Well, I'll ask one while hopefully your classmates are typing some in. I'm trying to think of how to word this. So I don't remember which one of you had it. Let's see here. You were discussing some of the cons. So some of the things that we as a country, I guess, have concerns about with immigration. And so I don't know if in your research you came across any suggestions or how other countries are doing it, but I know, and I'm glad you brought it up, that one of the major concerns is the strain on local social services. So I was curious if by chance in your research did you come across countries who are like channeling their immigration, so like if they have immigrants come in, those immigrants can only go into certain areas where maybe there's more services available. Did you see anything like that by chance from other countries?
Me personally, I did not see anything of that. I just looked up solely US. I probably should have looked up more of the other countries how they're doing it. But I know that with immigration systems, it's a lot different from the US compared to European countries, because even though it is very easy for one European country, just, I mean, a country from Europe to go from another country, solely because maybe a good example would be such as like Germans, how they would be immigrants to Spain for better healthcare purposes, and they would use it for surgery. Spain would had to make restrictions on that, such as like they have to live in that country for that certain amount of days, or I don't know where I'm going with this conversation, but I'm just saying that I haven't looked at much with other countries. I don't really know much about other systems.
Yeah, I only looked at the US as well.
Okay, no problem. I was just curious as I grew up in Arizona. I grew up like an hour from the Mexico border. So, I hear both sides and I've heard them all my life. So I just was curious what you guys had found. We've had a couple of good questions pop up through here. So one question is, maybe reflecting on your research, your personal opinions, and kind of piggybacks even on mine a little bit, should immigration be moderated in any way, shape, or form? What are your thoughts?
I know that
With immigrant, you want to go first,
you can
Jasmine?
go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. With immigration being moderated, I feel like there could be way more better, a more enforced system. Because currently, if people want to do it the right way, or I mean, I'm using air quotes right now. I can't really use my camera because my Wi-Fi is really bad. But when people try to say the right way is by establishing or using actual documentation and going through the U.S. citizenship like process. But now that system has been broken. I mean, not broken, but it's flawed. Um, where the fastest way for you to be a U.S. citizen, or one of the fastest ways, would be to get to ask for a green card or a residency from a sibling or a spouse who is a citizen of the United States, and it can depend from different countries. But I know for a fact that in Mexico, it takes over 20 years for that to get processed. In some countries, maybe in China, that can take 5, and other Hispanic countries that can take maybe 10 years. And obviously, that's not fast at all. I know people who've been waiting maybe more than 20 years and they still haven't gotten anything processed. Um, and the other fastest way would be to wait till your children who are born in the United States are 21 and they can help you get citizenship. That I know that can take faster, but I mean, obviously, you have to wait for your children to turn 21. So that doesn't really help with your case either. And many people don't have the time to wait for that long because they want to come to this country for more economic, not economic, more opportunities for education or economy, purposes to help with aid in their hometowns or whatnot. So I know that a lot of people want to do it the right way, but it's just too time consuming and they don't have time for that. And they rather just cross the border legally and wait till their children turn old enough for them to help get papers, basically. So I just kind of wish our country would notice that issue and would implement a better system or a faster way at least, so people can come to this country, I guess, if you want to say the right way.
Yeah, going off of what he said, I completely agree. My best friend is from Nigeria, and when she talks about how long it took her to actually come here and become a citizen, it's like, majority of her life. It's really crazy. So I think that it's moderated enough. And yeah, if anything, it should be moderated less.
Okay, interesting. I always love to hear personal connections to the subject. Okay, so one last question that came through. Again, this is, excuse me, a personal answer. Um, you did have one slide that showed, yeah, right here, that showed the I don't know what you want to call it. I the camp, okay, the facility where they have the immigrants come through. So the question was, how do you feel personally about these children, like how they were treated? What would you like to happen instead?
Well, what I've noticed, or I read an article basically about this as well. When Trump enacted the Zero Tolerance Act, because during the Obama administration, they only deported or would um, send undocumented immigrants back to their countries, unless when they made major criminal offenses such as drugs or owning a gun or one just more larger criminal offenses. But with Trump, with the Zero Tolerance Act, people can get deported even if they got pulled over for like speeding, something as simple as that, which obviously made a huge influx with the camps or the facilities you want to call them, and that was it was a way harder system for them to keep the families together, um, which caused many children to be separated from their families for months and months. And what I noticed from the Obama administration is that they would only separate the families for a maximum amount of maybe less than a week. So I guess I don't personally find it just at all for kids to be separated from their families for a very long time. And even with them being at such a young age, some of them wouldn't be able to even recognize their mothers and fathers. I've seen like maybe 3 videos of kids who are like toddlers and they can't even recognize their parents anymore. So it's very heartbreaking for me to see that. And I would never want to put that harm or like cause that pain for someone ever in my life. So, yeah.
Okay, I was just waiting to see if anybody else wanted to pipe in there. Okay. Another excellent presentation. Thank you guys for your work. So you get, the round of applause as well. All right. I know you guys are probably all dying to get up and breathe and be human and get away from your computer. I am going to give you guys, let's do a 10-minute break. Okay. Then we'll come back, discuss what we need to, and kind of go from there. Okay. So let's do a 10-minute break. I will get the timer up on the screen and we will go from there. Go take a nice deep breath and relax for 10 minutes, okay? Okay, believe it or not, that was 10 minutes already. So do me a favor and take to the chat box, say hi or I'm here or something like that, just so I know we're all here. We're all back. Because we need to all be back for what I've got going on next here. Okay, I'm just going to take a peek. Okay. All right. I think we have everybody. Hope so. Okay. All right. So we obviously don't have a whole lot of time left, which is fine because we need to, the presentation is the main focus for the class. There's really just one main thing that I want to touch on. Then I want to go over what your work is for this week and try to let you guys out a little bit early. Just a heads up, next week, so we meet next week, it's the 5th. That's when you guys will start your work on group presentation number 3, which happens to be your final one that you have to do as a group. So please try to make sure that you are here next week so that you're able to work within those groups, okay? All right. So here's what we need to do. I need all of you guys to grab hold of your textbooks, okay? Because you're going to want your textbooks for what we are doing next. So I'll give you guys that opportunity to grab your textbooks. Just a real quick activity, I guess, to review some important information that you will want to be familiar with for this week's assignment. Okay. So while you guys are grabbing that, okay. All right. So I guess really your main assignment that you guys are going to need to work on for the week is, it's actually called a thesis and argument map. Okay. We've talked a lot about, how we frame our argument and things like that. We've discussed logic, types of logic. But I really want to touch on 3 major types of argument style. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you guys back into your groups, so your presentation groups. It's just easier for me to do that because you guys were already in a breakout group. So we're going to just break up some information really quickly. Let me do this. I'm going to type something on our whiteboard here. And I can't spell apparently. Here we go. Okay, so the three major arguments that I want us just to look at here really quickly, there's three different styles. There's the Tolman. Kind of think of like, you guys are probably way younger than me, but there used to be a show called Tool Time, and they called him Tim the Toolman Taylor. That's almost how you pronounce it, Toolman. Okay. Then there's the classical argument, and then there's the Rogerian argument. Okay. Really quickly, we are going to touch on those. You guys are going to touch on them in two groups. Still typing, sorry. Okay. So on the whiteboard, you should see not only the type of argument, but the chapter that you can find information regarding these types of arguments. And then below that, I've got what needs to be found for all three arguments. So what we're going to do is, I should have written group one. You guys are going to end up looking at the Toolman type argument. Group two, you guys will take a look at the classical type argument. And then group three, you of course will take the Rogerian type argument. Okay, so in your groups, what I want you guys to do is I want you to flip through those chapters that I have listed. So if you're in group one and you have to look for the Toolman, what are the 6 parts kind of that make up that argument? I want you to just flip through chapter 5. They literally list them out like, 1 through 6. These are the 6 parts. So I want you guys to find those, identify them, and see if somebody in your group is willing to be the scribe to type them in the chat box. Okay. So group 2, same type of thing. What are the 6 parts that make up a classical argument? And then group 3, yours is just a little bit different. I want you to look for the 4 major goals of a Rogerian argument. Okay. Keeping it simple, abbreviated, not necessarily looking for sentences or anything like that. I just want to make sure you guys can identify these things. Okay. So do you have any questions as far as what you need to do in your groups? Okay. We are going to do this fast. Okay. So let me give you guys 10 minutes. Okay. See if you can find the information in 10 minutes. So that gives us just a little bit of time to discuss them. So 10 minutes. Everybody remember what their argument is, what chapter they have to go to before I click you into your breakout sessions. Because once I do that, you guys don't have access to the whiteboard. So everybody take one last look. Okay, 10 minutes. Once you're in your groups, if you have any questions, let me know, okay? Looks like it brought you guys all back. So what I need you guys to do then is whoever was willing to be the scribe, if you can put your answers to whatever your requirement was for your group, if you can put those in the chat box. Oh, wow, you guys are fast. Awesome. Okay, let me do this so I can look at them. All right, so let's see here. Group 1, I'm looking at. Sorry, they all came in at once, so I'm trying to find it all. Okay, so it looks like Beatrice posted for group one, and group one had what is called the Toulmin argument. It's found in chapter 5. So thank you. You guys simplified it. You did it perfect. So there are 6 parts to using a Toulmin argument, okay, to applying that in a paper, in a presentation, speech, whatever. And the 6 parts are claim, data, warrant, backing, a rebuttal, and then a qualifier. And we're gonna see some visual representations of these types of arguments. I believe it was last week I showed you a PowerPoint that just gave you your first little glimpse of how these arguments were set up, and I'm gonna show them to you to remind you. Okay, so let's see here. Who wrote for? Okay, so it looks like Lexi wrote for group 2, which was the classical argument. The classical argument is probably what you're the most familiar with. There's introduction, a statement of like proposition or like a division, like an argument, some narration in there, some proof, some refutation, okay, talking about the other side of the argument, and then a conclusion that wraps it all up, okay? Now, the Rogerian argument tends to be one of my favorites, okay? So goal 1, writers let readers know they have been understood. Goal 2, writers show how readers' positions are valid in certain contexts and under certain conditions. Goal 3, writers help readers understand that both of them share the same values. Goal 4, writers propose solutions made up of elements from both sides that can be agreed on by both parties. Okay, so the Rogerian argument really is about finding common ground and a common goal. It works really well when you are discussing an issue that is highly volatile, where both sides of the parties feel very strong about their argument. It works really well if you can find any type of common ground, because it kind of helps deflate a little bit of the anger that may be associated with that. I can always remember the Rogerian argument because use the chat box. Let me know if you guys know who Mr. Rogers is, and not Aaron Rodgers. Okay, let me know if you know who Mr. Rogers is from television. Okay, good, awesome. I've had classes who don't know who Mr. Rogers is, so I have to ask. Oh, you guys are amazing. Okay. So the way that I remember the Rogerian argument is I think of Mr. Rogers, and he was all about being peaceful and everybody happy. And that's kind of what the Rogerian argument is. It's trying to find the best solution for everybody involved, okay? Now, why on earth do I show you or have you guys go through these arguments? Let us go into Blackboard. Let me show you what your work is, and we will go from there. Okay, so if you guys load up, Blackboard, it automatically goes to the announcements page. Let's go into learning plans. Whoops, I went too far. Go to learning plan 3. Okay. Learning plan 3 is all about those persuasive rhetorical strategies, okay? How are we going to write our argument? So, part of your homework that I would like you guys to do is actually just to open up this folder that has the green writing. If you have not taken the opportunity to look through the induction and the deduction, if you don't remember my PowerPoint, the PowerPoint I showed you, it's right there. There's just very good activities in here that discuss those different rhetorical strategies that you can use, okay? But for now, I'm going to take you in this folder right here. Oh, goodness, I'm so glad you guys asked that. Okay, let me write myself a note really quick. Okay, so I just needed to write something down so I remember to go over it. Okay, so I'm going to take you in the semester project folder. There are some great activities and resources in here, okay? This is English Comp 2, so I have to assume that you guys are comfortable writing thesis statements, or generally comfortable writing thesis statements, okay? Your assignment for this week is actually found all the way, there's a lot of videos, right? Found all the way at the bottom here, okay? Do you see this folder that's found at the very, very, very bottom? Your assignment is called a thesis and argument map. Okay, let's open that up. For this activity, you will create a thesis statement from your research question. Okay, so you all turn in your research question, the journal. I went through all of those, gave you some feedback. Okay, so you're going to create a thesis statement from that question. Your thesis must include your refined topic, okay, objectively explained, your attitude toward your topic, okay, tell me how you feel about your topic. 3, your major supporting ideas for your declared topic, listed in the order they will appear in your essay. Now, number 3 could be, remember how I put you guys in groups and you discuss possible subtopics for your topic? Those subtopics could actually be your major supporting ideas. Okay, what are your major supporting ideas for your topic? List them in the order they will appear in your essay. So we have an example. The paper companies along the Fox River should pay for its cleanup because, and then you would list your reasons. Okay. Now remember, I believe I told you shoot for at least 3 because that helps you develop a long paper. Next, so after you guys write that thesis statement, you're going to use your knowledge about map arguments. Okay, we had the PowerPoint with those visual maps before. So you're going to create a visual outline of your argument. Okay, so I don't want you to freak out when you see building argument maps. It's basically an outline, but it's a visual outline of how you plan to set up your research paper. Okay, you can use software. You are more than welcome to actually draw something out on a piece of paper and take a picture of it and submit it to me, something like that. Whatever you guys want to do, whatever works the best for you, okay? Be sure to start with your thesis and then kind of branch off of there. And I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. Branch off of there with both your support and then those opposing viewpoints to your topic. Please feel free to use colors and shapes to kind of show your organization in there, and make sure you label your map with your name and your topic. Now, let me show you some examples. So we went through the 3 major types of argument. We went through Toulmin's, how that's organized, classical, and Rogerian. So here is what a Toulmin argument map might look like, okay? It's kind of a little confusing-ish, right? But, everybody processes information differently. So feel free to use this example if you think you might want to use the Toulmin style of argument. Now, like I said, classical is pretty much what we usually use, okay? So like your introduction, you start with your thesis, then you kind of have some background explaining your topic, then you start going into your proof, okay? The refutation is kind of you saying, okay, here's how it should be. This is what needs to happen, and then a conclusion. So that's how a classical argument would be mapped out. Now, the Rogerian was the last one we talked about. The Rogerian still is kind of, it's a little choppy. But your intro would have your thesis. Here you would maybe talk about, side one, and then you would talk about, okay, so this side believes, this, okay? You would talk about side two. So it's however you want to organize your paper. So basically what you are doing is you are creating a visual outline of your research paper. So you're going to write the thesis statement from your research question, and then you're going to draw or use Word, whatever you want to do, use a map, create a visual outline of your argument. Do you guys have questions on that? Let me know if you have questions. As I said, you can use Word, you can use Prezi, you can set it up like in a PowerPoint, or you can just write it and draw it on a piece of paper and take a picture of it. It's whatever you want to do. Just please make sure you label, what each bubble or which piece of your map is, all right? When you're done with that, I need you to submit it right here. And it's due by 8:30 before class next week. Okay, so you have a week to work on it. Okay, the other thing that I forgot to mention to you guys, let me go back into our learning plans. Okay, my mouse doesn't want to work. Okay, learning plan 3, we want to go over by where your group presentation information was at. Okay, so in the green, let's scroll down to the group presentation folder. Okay, so just a reminder, I need you guys to submit your outlines. Let me know which slides you did and share your experience about presentation 2. How do you feel it went? Okay, so if you guys could get that submitted ASAP, I would love that because it helps me grade a little bit better. It gives me more information to grade off of, okay? So your homework, and I obviously always put it in the announcements page. I will email it to everyone as well. Your homework is going to be to work on that thesis and argument map, to kind of just review chapters 5, 6, and 7, and to even go through some of the material in Learning Plan 2 and Learning Plan 3, just to help you out. And then please, for your Group 2 presentation, submit your outline or your notes, whatever you used. Let me know which slides, and then let me know how your experience was with presentation 2, okay? That was a lot of information, like all of a sudden. Do you guys have any questions on what you need to do throughout this week? Okay, well, I am going to go ahead and let you guys out. I'm only about 6 minutes early, but let you out just a little bit early. You did a great job on your presentations. I'll get those graded sometime throughout the next week here. I will get the homework posted so you guys have a clear picture of what it is you need to look at and do for the week. Other than that, I'll hang out here for the next 5, 6 minutes. And if you need me, let me know, okay? Have a great weekend. Enjoy the sunshine.